Opinions are something each one of us have, whether you're discussing your favourite kinds of music, movies, TV shows, or billions of other topics. Each one of us have different opinions on each in some way or another. And it's what makes talking about those varied opinions so special. I get interested to see all the different genres of shows and stuff people are into. It would be boring if everyone decided what was the best and what was the worst, everyone being in the exact same agreement. Hearing how others experience media from their perspective is the way to go, and to keep an ongoing conversation, understanding from different points of views. But then you get the world of the internet where you make a video saying how you think isekais are kinda dumb, and getting a not so pleasant like to dislike ratio. But hey, it's all opinions at the end of the day, so it's a-okay. But many have certain views that isn't of the majority, especially me with anime, so I'll discuss some of the anime that didn't gel with me as much as it did with others. I'll also spoil quite a bit depending on what anime I'm talking about, starting with Attack on Titan. Now I really enjoyed the first season. It had a very unique concept with the huge titans terrorizing the world, especially after seeing the very first episode. The titans seemed like an unstoppable force, killing hundreds, obliterating the town, seeing the huge goddamn one looking over the wall, then an armored one storming the gates. To add on top of that, the titans only have one weak spot, which is at the very back of their necks, with a military counter this by using their own specialized equipment, ODM gear, which is such a genius bit of inventing, giving the soldiers mobility, using wires to propel them from building to building, by then using their blades to get into the correct position to take down a titan. It creates some insanely cool action scenes, and with this gear, the soldiers still need to be careful of how much fuel they use, or it could mean life or death. It made the series so intense. It kept me hooked for the rest of the season. The action was great, it had some cool twists, it was well paced. I still loved the first season, but as it went on, my enjoyment of the series wasn't what it once was. The second season came round and it was alright, the action was good, story was fine, but I remember the unveiling of the colossal and armored titans' identities being quite underwhelming. It kind of just happened and it wasn't all too surprising. Then season 3 was out, where the action was absolutely phenomenal, probably the best in the series, having some of the most iconic scenes. But this is where the plot started to slip a bit for me. It wasn't bad, just not incredible. It started adding stuff I wasn't too fond of with how the titans worked. It started to get a bit absurd, where if a normal titan eats a special founding titan, it can revert back into a human with special titan powers. It just felt a little silly to me. But once the 4th season came around, that's when it really started getting ridiculous. The 4th season was definitely where the series changed the most. Some like the direction it goes in, some don't. I was somewhat in the middle until it started to get a bit strange. I felt like it just added more and more stuff to make it more complicated, but not in a good way. It felt like it was making it more complex for the sake of it, to add these random twists that just add more questions. Like you find out that Eren's mother was eaten by Eren's father's past wife, or one that I really didn't like, where Eren technically time travels to view his father's memories and alters them. It was meant to be this big twist where it was Eren's actions this whole time, and that was supposed to be surprising, but for me I just found it dumb and a bit unnecessary to just add more confusion into the story. To add upon that, it just shows that these founding titans have some ridiculous powers, but the normal titans don't seem to be as much of a threat anymore. It took away my enjoyment compared to the past seasons. A lot of people love it, but I just felt like Attack on Titan swayed so much for what it once was, and what made it so fun. It became less about fighting titans, and more about the ideals of war. It's not awful, just not as entertaining, where I didn't even finish the 2-part finale. But to break away from that and go on to another series, and I'll be honest, this is a series I have talked about before, and I don't really know why people enjoy it. With Attack on Titan and others I'll talk about later on, I can see how it could catch the appeal of others. But with this, I just don't get it. I think this anime is horrible. And that is No Game No Life. I went over this anime quite extensively in a past video 2 years ago. Damn, it's been that long. So I won't go super into detail, but mention pointers on why I hate this anime. The good are that the style of animation is cool. Okay, now the bad. The story sucks. Its gimmick is having the world's rules decided with games, by also adding in some annoying isekai nonsense. The games they play are also really weird and off-putting now and then. Every character is annoying in some way or another, which can be very frustrating sometimes. The main dude Sora is too good with games, where you always know he's easily going to win, so it doesn't have moments where it feels very tense. And the worst of all is the gross fan service that often happens, especially with a younger 11-year-old girl, which makes it so much worse. So yeah, this series has barely anything going for it, and I don't know why it's liked quite a bit in the community, but I guess that's me. So I'll move on because I don't want to think about dumb no game no life anymore. I really don't get the appeal. Anyway, I'll talk about a more recent anime that is a short movie made by the same author of Chainsaw Man, Look Back. Look Back has a bit going for it. It's a story about a young girl called Fujino who draws up small comics for her school newspaper, with the whole class always complimented her for the talent she has, until another girl, Kyomoto, who doesn't even show up to school, begins to share the newspaper together with her, but doing their own short manga. But Fujino soon finds out that this new kid is extremely talented at art, where most of the class then prefers this other kid's comics, and start to not care about Fujino's work. Overcome with jealousy, Fujino then spends most of her time doing as much art as possible, learning how to get better to overtake the other kid, yet it still doesn't work out and makes very little change with how everyone else sees her art, with Kyomoto being the superior one. It then continues to where Fujino ends up meeting Kyomoto, and it turns out that Kyomoto is a huge fan of the work Fujino does, and is a huge inspiration to her, as they then soon become great friends, creating manga together over the years, devoting most of their time and dedication to their projects, becoming good enough to put out and publish their own manga to the world, and gaining popularity to be able to push volumes out continuously. And at some point Kyomoto decides to go off on their own to an art college because she wants to prove that she is capable of doing things on her own with her art and social life, since she stayed in her bedroom for most of her school life, so she lacks friends and quite a bit of social skills, which is why she thinks college would be a good idea. But that is when Fujino and Kyomoto go their separate ways, as their friendship starts to dwindle a bit. From this concept, I actually quite enjoy it. It takes a very realistic approach of how it can be like with the art industry, with the production of manga, and how devoted you must be to the craft, with how difficult of a career it is. It can also be very relatable to many who take an interest in art, especially with me, where I love to draw, and it's been like that for a while, where I always try to improve as much as I can, putting in the time. But as with everything, there is always going to be someone who is a trillion times better, which always feels daunting. You do art for years, yet someone recently gets into it and already accomplishes more than you can. It isn't a reason to give up from how hard it is. Everyone goes at their own pace, many having varied art styles from each other. It's all what makes art so special in the first place, by seeing how it all develops. And Look Back constructs part of its story all around that. It was honestly nice to see. From how I relate to it a bit, I understand a part of the struggle art brings. But wait a sec, this is a video about anime I find overrated, so why have I only discussed good things about this anime? Well, that's because when the film gets around to a little over the halfway point, my opinion started to change from how I viewed the first half. The tone of the story completely changes, and this isn't always a bad thing, but the way the anime executes it doesn't feel right to me. Basically, the story drops what's meant to be an out of nowhere heartbreaking scene that's meant to shock you, where one of the girls, Kyomoto, ends up getting murdered by a mentally unstable college student who thought their art was plagiarized. The rest of the film then tries to make this big emotional impact, to play with your feelings, but as bad as it sounds, I honestly didn't care. It all felt so forced. It felt like the film was forcing you to cry, instead of it coming naturally. It felt like it was pushing me, being like, "Oh, look how sad all this is, you want to cry, right?" Well, I'm just like, no, since this is also quite a short movie, being only 50 or so minutes long. Plus you meet Kyomoto at the 17-minute mark, with her then dying 35 minutes into the film. That means there is only 18 minutes for you to get to know her, and that for me is nowhere near enough time for me to care about this character. Yet the whole emotion thing made it seem like I was supposed to care, adding lines that are meant to be tear-jerking. Maybe I'm just heartless, but that's honestly how I felt. I'd prefer if the anime stayed in the direction of the first half and went more into how there are many struggles you must face when going into developing manga, with all the challenges you must overcome. I'd rather the whole film be solely based on that, but instead it felt like it tried being an extremely emotional movie just for the sake of it, which is disappointing because everything else before that was genuinely good. Now the last main one I'll talk about is Spy X Family, which for those who don't know, Spy X Family, to put simply, is about a fake family. The dad Lloyd, which is a spy, the mother Yor, which is an assassin, and the daughter Anya, which was adopted only for the reason of the mission, yet she has mind-reading powers no one knows about. But the reason they must be a fake family is to get the daughter Anya into a highly esteemed school, where Anya must earn herself 8 stellar stars for Anya to become a scholar and be able to attend a meeting where Lloyd's target is going to be. For the first bit of season 1 it was actually pretty good. I did like the concept of the family needing to keep their identities hidden. Each family member had a secret nobody else knew about. Yor doesn't know that Lloyd is a spy, and Lloyd has no idea that Yor is an assassin. The only one who does is Anya, with her mind-reading ability, as all of them live with each other, having these secrets. It's nice to see how all this works itself into the plot. It's also cool to see that even though they are a fake family, seeing them all bond makes you think that maybe it isn't as fake as it sounds. The series is also set in a very old-timey European setting that gives it its uniqueness, so there is a lot this anime has going for it, yet it started to change later on in the first season, to where I stopped liking it as much. It started to not follow the story, to end up to be more like a slice of life. But don't get me wrong, slice of lives aren't bad, I've definitely watched my fair few, but it's not the direction I expected this plot to go. It does have more moments where the family bond together, but it also got a lot more boring, where I wish the storyline would just move on and stop focusing on these side stories. It's not entertaining to watch Anya make an art project at her school for half the episode, and I don't care if Yor has an episode where she's learning how to cook but completely sucks at it. Speaking of Yor, with the first season, you barely actually see her do very many assassin stuff, the thing that makes her character actually interesting, and Anya became more of just a cutesy comic relief character, ending up to be slightly more annoying. Through the next half of the season, the actual plot hardly progresses. It all felt like filler, even though that's just how the story's going to be now, leaning a lot more into the slice of life genre, which some like, but I got bored of it quick. Now those anime were the ones I wanted to focus on the most, but I still have a few I want to talk about a little, even though I know it's unfair, since some of these are series I've only watched a tiny bit of and wasn't very amused. Can you blame me for not wanting to finish an anime I wasn't too fond of when I started it? So don't take some of these as my official opinion of the whole series. It's only the tiny parts I've watched, because it would be unfair if I only watched one episode and then called the whole anime garbage. Anyway, beginning with Chainsaw Man. I wasn't too keen on the characters and the story didn't keep my interest all too much. It had some neat ideas, but not enough to keep me invested. Oshinoko. I thought the whole getting reincarnated as a baby was really dumb, especially when it was trying to be really dark at some points. I just couldn't take it seriously. Kaiju number 8. I thought it was just very generic and it didn't keep me entertained. Weathering with You, really forgettable, and I didn't feel like it expanded enough on its main premise of a girl being able to control the weather. The 2004 Full Metal Alchemist made an incredible story terrible by not following the manga and making the whole plot a mess. And that's all I can think of right now. There are probably plenty more, but I think I've said enough already. Opinions are always going to be very divided. No one is going to 100% agree to what you think, and you're not going to agree with everything someone else says. But I feel like that's what makes talking about it all more interesting. So if you have a hot take about an anime you dislike or find overrated, then it would be nice to hear about, since sharing opinions is what makes anime and such so fascinating.